Good afternoon to the entire Tubman and York University community. My name is Clifton Grant, and I'm the undergraduate student representative on the Tubman Executive Committee. And it is my honor and privilege to welcome you to our third and final Tubman Talk and our celebration of Black History Month 2025, Labor Movements and Organizing. It's a very important and critical discussion that will provide further engagement, enlightenment, and ultimately more empowerment under the theme of Black labor. We will highlight the contributions and challenges and resistance of Black workers in Canada and globally. I am highly looking forward to another thought-provoking discussion with our esteemed panel to my right and honored guests in this room on this critical topic, which will offer us platforms to engage scholars, activists, union organizers, and community members in this meaningful dialogue. I have the honor and privilege of being your moderator for this powerful discussion. And before I introduce our esteemed panel, I first would like to start off with our land acknowledgements. We recognize that many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with the territories upon which York University campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. York University acknowledges its presence on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations. The area known as Takaranto has been taken care of by the Anishinaabe Nation and the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. This territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peacefully share and care for the Great Lakes region. We also acknowledge that we are members of the African diaspora that are ancestors of the transatlantic slave trade, that forcibly and violently removed us from our homelands to these stolen lands and pay homage to our forefathers and foremothers for their sacrifices so we could be gathered here today. Let's introduce our esteemed panel. First to my immediate right is Tatiana B. Ferguson. Tatiana is a leader in equity and inclusion. Respectfully, they want to clap before they hear your bio. Tatiana is a leader in equity and inclusion and a co-founder in the Black Queer Youth Collective. In her private practice, Tatiana coordinates and facilitates capacity building activities for organizational and systemic change. Her work is informed by anti-oppression framework with critical consideration to how intersections of race, gender, and class interplay to create barriers for marginalized communities. Tatiana has worked with several community organizations on all three levels of government to inform public policies. Notably, she spearheaded the Toronto for All campaign to raise awareness about racism and transphobia and consulted on the Toronto Action Plan to confront anti-Black racism and several other health and social development service plans. Beyond her public policy and community work, Tatiana has actively been involved in several community-based research projects. As part of the inaugural Queer and Trans Research Lab, housed at the Mark S. Bonham Center for Sexual Diversity Studies at the University of Toronto, where she created the Transcending Love Rings and Chains. She was also the co-investigator on Trans Pulse Canada, a national research study on the health and well-being of two-spirit trans and non-binary people, and a research project on sexual and mental health of the Black queer communities during the COVID-19 pandemic. Tatiana is committed to increasing access to essential services and improving the quality of life of 2S LGBTQ plus people in Canada and around the world. Please give Tatiana a huge round of applause for all of her work she's done. Thank you. Now we can clap. To Tatiana's right is Mischka Crichton. Mischka is a Carnival cultivist and operations professional who holds an honors Bachelor in Science in Psychology and Sociology and a diploma in Paralegal Studies. For 12 years, she has honed her skills in administration, project management, and logistics as an executive assistant. She has held various senior executive assistant positions at Deloitte Canada, including the Office of General Counsel, and most recently to the Chief Legal Officer. Mischka's love for performance, music, and her culture was nurtured from a very young age. The Toronto-born Vincy is a longtime contributor to the Caribbean and Carnival culture. She has played Mass from the age of 4 on University Avenue to becoming the three-time winner of Toronto Caribbean Carnival's King and Queen of the Bands. Go Mischka. Female individual competition. Mischka is featured in the 2021 documentary Becoming a Queen, alongside her sister, Joella Crichton, the 9-time Toronto Caribbean Carnival Queen. Mischka's passion for music and Carnival leads her next steps in empowering the Carnival diaspora and having Carnival University recognized as the art that it is. Mischka is currently the CEO of the Toronto Caribbean Carnival and is currently completing her executive MBA at Kellogg Schulich. Please give Mischka a big round of applause for being here today. Last but not least, at the end of panel is Xavier Mclaughlin. Xavier, otherwise known as X to a lot of his friends and colleagues, is the current operations manager and education systems navigator with parents of Black children. He's an entrepreneur, former program manager, coordinator, and facilitator with Black-led and Black-serving organizations since 2005. Xavier has over 18 years of experience working in Toronto's priority and neighborhood improvement areas, the goal of which has been to create sustainable opportunities for youth facing multiple barriers. Through his founding work with Triple Balance Community Services, Canada Elite Basketball Association, and Canada Youth Basketball League, Xavier has created a long-lasting impact on the lives of many Toronto families. With a formal education in business, commerce, and business administration management, Xavier seeks to bridge the gap between business and society, people and profit. Great work done by Xavier. Please give him a big round of applause, please. So that is our esteemed eclectic panel coming from 3 distinctive different areas of labor movements in our city. So I'm dying to hear what they have to say and their input into our enlightenment into this very powerful and important topic matter. I just have to say personally, on a personal level, not only great to be here as a student at York University, but I've known X for over 25 years. We're actually basketball referees together. So we miss you, X, on the floor too. So, so it's great to be here. And of course, to meet Tatiana and Mischka. And Mischka, I will see you at Carnival, which I've played mass before in the past. So yeah.
I'm expecting everybody in the room.
Mischka, Carnival is for Jamaicans too, right?
Yeah. Oh my.
Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay.
I think for everybody, the Toronto Caribbean Carnival is truly about all the islands, all of us, and cultures that aren't even a part of that. It's for everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, Jamaican.
Thank you. And the work that Tatiana is doing, I was just talking to Ruth earlier, as one of the sad testaments of what's going on in our society is that the pendulum is swinging back the other way now. Right? We went through obviously George Floyd, social movements, and all DEDI initiatives, and now we're seeing the reverse of that. So we need people like Tatiana on the ground being a change maker, right, and an advocate for people who's a voice for the voiceless, as I like to say. So thank you for being here too. I really respect all the work that you're doing. Okay, let's start with our questions. So we'll start with Tatiana on my right here, and I'll pass you the mic, and then we'll go across. So our first question is, Black community organizations often rely on extensive unpaid labor from dedicated members, which can place significant strain on the work-life balance. How true is that? How can governments, funders, and broader society better recognize, support, and compensate this essential labor to ensure sustainable community advocacy without overburdening individuals and families? I think that's a very important question for our community. And
can folks hear me? I mean, I'm guessing you folks in here can hear me. But yeah, I think that when it comes to so I'm co-founder of the Black Queer Youth Collective, but I'm also our managing director. And I agree, I think there is a lot of unpaid labor that goes into sustaining our work. The BQIC have supported hundreds of Black, queer, and trans youth here in Toronto and Greater Toronto area over the past 8 years of operation. But with that has come a lot of changes. We are actually currently embarking on a growth journey, and we are discussing ways to sustain our work outside of the NFP, the not-for-profit business model. Because I think a lot of people don't equate not-for-profit management with business management. And to me, to be honest, I also have I also have a education in business, and I see the frameworks in which we work very similar. As a managing director, however, and also being a community member with multiple intersections, I understand the priorities of the individuals that are called to do this work. And as a result, I myself, in my role, I rarely, if ever, and you can ask my team, you don't got to take my word for it, but I rarely ask folks to take on work that I myself am not willing to pay for, even if that means me sacrificing my salary. And I think that's just the reality of being called to do this work, but also understanding the current social systems that limit access to employment, especially for the demographic that I work with, Black LGBTQ youth. So we know unemployment and underemployment is a big thing, especially for youth. But when you look at those intersections and who's actually even being considered for employment, you see a much larger disparity in terms of representation in employment. So yeah, I think there's a lot of work that I myself considering. One of the things that I had to do last year was I enrolled in a course to really think about corporate accountability, really think about not how do I work within a system, because that can still make me, how do I put this? I can still replicate mechanisms that's harmful, even though my intentions are good. So I had to really think about doing business in a different way. And it's an ongoing work. I don't make false promises, so I'm very transparent with my team. And I think sometimes transparency helps. And where possible, like I said, I do try to incentivize the work to the best of my ability. So that's what I would say in terms of what me, myself, as a community organizer is doing to combat these notions of financial, I would say, insecurity, as well as creating additional financial hardship for folks who are really committed to doing this work. In terms of my take on the government, and I don't know if you folks have sponsors here or if government officials are on this call, but there are a lot of discussions that I have behind the scenes. I'm not going to, because I don't know if folks will be recording. I'm not going to mention it explicitly here, but definitely there are a few major funders that I've raised concerns, because I do have a research background as well, as mentioned in my bio. I raised concerns around what is not working. And there still does not seem to be enough effort to change the system. So really what I'm planning on, as mentioned, the BQICs on this growth journey, is I'm planning on proposing a strategy that can easily be worked into a system that historically has not benefited folks doing this work. So that's kind of where I'm at. A lot of things are still in the work, but like I said, I don't make false promises. So yeah, with the government, I don't buy into the BS either. So I call it behind the scenes, when we are talking the talk, I call things as I see it. In terms of priorities, we kind of outlined it. And as you've mentioned, in down south, there is kind of this attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's because this association of with Blackness and actually facilitating access, or I say combating oppression, facilitating access for communities that have been marginalized and disenfranchised. I take those issues personal, because a lot of my work has been to build systems that are equitable. So I still have a lot of work to do with the government in terms of really solidifying a plan. And this goes beyond the Toronto Action Plan to confront anti-Black racism, which was for the city of Toronto. I'm really looking across the country and of course, looking at how do we even create this across different continents? How do we create more opportunities? Because immigration is a current issue we're dealing with. And it's very layered. But those are my thoughts on, I would say, compensating community members for their work, my roles and responsibilities, and how I'm challenging the status quo.
It's such an honor to sit in between these two, because I can only imagine, just from my own experience, I know when you said called to do this job, it really is a calling. It really is, and I'll be spiritual. It really is something that a higher power has asked you to do. Otherwise, I don't think we would make it. It's knowing that that's why, that's the drive, that's the reasoning, and it's for your people. That's what allows you to make the self-sacrifices, the sacrificing. I could tell you at the Carnival, our executive team of 4 people, yeah, you got to sacrifice your salary, because we won't make it. And it's not something new. The Black community has been dealt with by government in such a transactional way. And the example that I use all the time is You know, I applied for a grant this year to get $10 to rent a microphone. But if you gave me $100, I could buy it. And I could do what I need to do in so many different ways, and how much more that would benefit us. This job has for sure turned me into a politician. I had no idea how much time would be spent advocating for the rights of our community, but also just for the money, the pay. The Carnival contributes almost actually $500 million in economic impact. I like using my hands. $180 million in tax revenue. That's every time someone spends money that has to do with the Carnival, including us. There's 13% tax on that goes to the government. That's equals $180 million. This is over a 5-day weekend celebration. And yet still we have received less than $1 million, all 3 levels of government combined. However, we've been advocating, and that's just the route that we took. There's so many other different ways. We knew if we don't get the buy-in or something from the government, this decades-long systemic underfunding, we won't be able to get out of it. So we spent the last 2 years just focusing on advocacy, focusing on the story, focusing on making sure that government had the information that they needed in order to give us some funding that's historic. However, we're still waiting on it at the same time. That also leads me to community. I'm so grateful for this platform to be able to talk about specifically labor in our community, because our community, some people get it, they're close enough to it, but there is people who are 2 and 3 arms lengths away, and they don't have that same information, and it's hard to get it to them, and they lash out. They're upset. They don't understand. How could the Carnival not have any money to pay us? Why is it that I'm waiting for this or for that? And meanwhile, they are a part of this community that's sacrificing every day, every year to ensure that this festival happens. And not for the government, really. There's an ecosystem of beautiful Black, brown, all types of people from the Caribbean that rely on this festival to happen every year. We're going into our 58th year. If that doesn't happen, the ricochet effect in our community would be, we have to stomach so many hard conversations, hard months where you can't make, certain ends meet. But I say all of that to say, where government's involved, for sure, proper and sustainable funding, multi-year funding that actually reflects first of all, the social good, what it means. There's a reason why Canada gets to say they're a country that's diverse and rich with multiculturalism. It's because of our existence and the way that we've gathered and made movements and what we contribute here. So that needs to be reflected in the way that they give us funding. That can also go down to policy, which is honestly so way over my head, but I've just barely started to push my foot into that door when it comes to government advocacy. But there are changes that need to be made there. Incentives for the economic benefit or the social benefit, but also that recognition that this community, Black communities, we don't have the same benefits. Everybody needs to stop pretending. Even though we acknowledge it, we need to be even realer about it. Like the disparity between other organizations, the way they get treated, the way they are monitored, the requirements that they have, there's so much distance between them, and they have to ask themselves, and I do this in meetings, and I'm sure my counterparts do as well, say, why do we have to do that? How come we have to go through this channel? And challenge them on that and continue to. I've been with this organization now 3 years, so it's helped. I've learned a lot. I have a more footing and understanding of how much I can push and not. But at the end of the day, I grew up here. I'm a product of this society. We all are. And it's really tough. And we do need also our community's support in our advocacy efforts, because sometimes, at least in my case, our community advocating on their behalf sometimes looks like they're advocating against the organization that's trying to help them. And that decreases my ability to go into a room with these other people, let's say, that hold the purse strings, and put pressure on them when my own community sometimes seems like they're not supporting me. So I think also things like this, what we're doing right now, this is such a beautiful opportunity for me to say some of these things so that people can know, like, hey, they are doing what they're supposed to do. They are supporting us, and how can we get behind them and do a little bit more?
Oh man, hard set of acts to follow. So I want to.
Good. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a person with their hand up as well too. So I just want to make sure.
Good question. Yeah.
Okay.
No problem. All right. So,
Before I say anything, I think it's important to socially locate myself, and so that you guys know where I'm coming from with my thoughts, my feelings, and my reactions. Okay. So first, I am a Jamaican born, and I got to do education in Jamaica as well too. I lived in New York for 5 years out of my life, close to 6, and then I moved to Canada. And so that colonial journey has shaped the way that I perceive the world and how I navigate through it. So why did I start with that? I start with that to say that the question that you gave is loaded. And if you guys know Clifton, I feel like Clifton had something to do with these questions. I feel like it. Because Clifton always asks the best questions, the most detailed questions, and then you're like, oh shoot, I gotta think meta. Like I gotta go deeper than what was on the surface. And I was very daunted by the questions when I walked in. But then when I saw my panelists and I heard them speak, I was like, oh, okay, my tribe, we're good. And you mentioned something about what brings you to this work. Both of you did. And I will tell you that sometimes when I have to explain to family members, friends, colleagues, or whatever, I have to explain to them, like, I think this is just my God mission. Like something was put into me to do this. Because if I really went with my inclinations as a person, I would never do this work. I'm chilling, right? I'm a business student. My brain works differently. I can handle business. I just can't handle the people in it and that colonial mindset. So that's what I want to drill down into when I answer this question. Okay. So my answer to this question, surface answer, is this. What we're experiencing is a product of a system that was meant to do exactly what it's doing. And if we think that it's not meant to do this, then that will drive you crazy because you're gaslighting yourself into thinking that the system is supposed to work for you when it's actually not built for you. And historically, it has always disadvantaged you. I also contrast that to say this. If you study history and if you study geography, you will look at that map and you will see places on the earth where these issues are not an issue, or where these issues look very different. And if you understand colonialism, what you'll understand is the reason why these things will look different in different places is because of people's proximity to power. What do I mean by that? So when I was speaking to Tatiana earlier, before we started, she had mentioned some things about her personal experience with education. I said that I found that very interesting because I could see where the education in one part of the world where colonialism was more oppressive than another part of the world, the education system followed the same suit. The education system was less oppressive where colonialism was less oppressive. But where it was most acutely oppressive, that's where you see the restrictions around education and pathways through education. So then if I think about Black students, Black children who are now working towards employment, and I think about all the different systems or working towards being in the labor market, and I think about all the different systems that post a barrier to them being involved in that system, it gives me some good ideas of how colonialism works. So when I look at that map and I say, I go to Finland, I go to Sweden, I go to some of those Scandinavian countries where the population is homogenous, everybody looks the same. So everybody can care about each other the same. I can look at you as my cousin, my uncle, my auntie, my distant family member. And these problems don't exist the same way there. In fact, it's very different. And I would suggest, instead of just looking at your own politics, where things are corrupt, broken, and not working, but actually working for the system that they're supposed to work for, look at other political systems and see how they do things. And know to yourself that our system could do the same, but we choose to operate in a way that upholds supremacy, upholds racism, and upholds colonial oppression. So, my answer to your question now. You asked me 9 questions, or you asked for 9 responses in one question. And I'll explain why you asked for 9 responses. You asked for 3 different categories: government, funders, and the broader society. And you asked for 3 different components: how they recognize, how they support, and how they compensate. So when I put that in a grid, it's 9 answers. I don't know if I'm going to give you 9 answers. I don't know if I'm going to give. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to give you 9 answers. And you know what it is too? I'm very much like, if you ask me a question, I need to answer your question. I feel it's disrespectful if I don't answer your question, right? You took time to phrase it a certain way, so it should be answered. So I'll go quickly, because I really, like I said, my preamble is my answer doesn't even matter, because it can work where we want it to work, but we just don't want it to work. So don't fool yourselves. But I'm just going to give an answer that will suffice and actually satisfy what was asked. So the first group, government, because I think it's the largest group. I'll go to a podcast that I listened to named Freakonomics. And what Freakonomics taught me was, if you want to be a successful not-for-profit organization, what you need to do is attach yourself to a larger government institution and do the work of that government institution that they themselves cannot or will not or do not know how to do. Because then what you can do is constantly draw back on them for resources that they need to put towards this work that is their responsibility, but is not their area of expertise. So the more we can find ways to attach to institutions, what that does is it allows us a level of sustainability. Government needs to recognize groups and recognize the barriers that they pose. For governments to support, they need to look at what institutional resources and partnerships actually look like with communities and with funders who are then going to disseminate these government funds as well too. And compensation, I didn't really get to for government, because I feel like their compensation is one that is rooted in their past transgressions as well too. So I don't know if it's just for what's currently happening. I need you to pay for your sins of the past as well too. For funders, I think this is my favorite group. Funders need to recognize what needs to be done in order to increase the number of Black organizations, Black serving organizations. And I go with Black to start, but I'm human. So I will also say there are other groups that need attention as well too. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the groups that are hitting the indicators, the negative indicators, the most or the hardest first. So that's why I start with Black, and I'll also include Indigenous at times as well too. So the other thing that I think funders can do to support is mentorship, but mentorship not through them, because you're not funder. There's already a level of intimidation and power that is not at the same level. Help me with mentors that actually fit the work that I'm doing and the culture that I come from and the groups that I'm serving. And then when I think about compensation from funders, this is huge for me. Compensation from funders needs to come with a recognition of the communities in which you're serving and the deficits that they may have, or if we don't want to say deficits, the needs they may have, along with the assets that they already possess. And that's why the needs need to be met so we can enhance the assets that they show. And then when I think about the broader society, to be honest with you, it's to be engaged. And I can't say the broader society so widely, because if I were to really break down the broader society, I could break it down by race, but I think sometimes it's more important to break it down by economics. And I've been able to put myself in a place where at times, like my panelists have said here with me, sometimes I can sacrifice a little bit so that others can eat, because I'm in that place of privilege. And really, I'm not. If you know my living. But it's just when you get to a certain spot, you want to make sure others can come along with you. So that's my answer.
I think that deserves all three of them a big round of applause, please. I learned from Tatiana that she doesn't make any false promises. And she is a woman of her word, and she's building systems. Build systems that are equitable. And it's still empowered, although we're going through a period of deconstruction and a paradigm shift in ideology. We learned from Mischka that this is really the work, labor of love. Love that. We're advocates. She reminded me of something I read about from Robin Maynard, of the constant policing of Black bodies, but it's also that goes to policy and governance, and subsequently lack of funding. That constant policing is another form of oppression. And of course, X has to remind us of the colonial mindset, that this system was not made for us, it's not built for us, so how can we be successful in the system? We're actually fighting upriver, but we continue to fight. And thank you, my brother, for breaking down my question to its core. Like I said, we've known each other for a long time. We saw there was a question up. We just want to engage a little bit more in this topic. If anyone has any questions right now, I thought before we go to the next question. Was it Opal? Opal had her hand up. Opal, you still there? Or is there anyone else that wants to ask a question about this particular topic? We can do that right now. Opal's still there. If not, can move on to the next topic. Yeah.
Oh,
okay. All right. Okay, so Opal says hi. Okay. Hi, Opal. See your hand up. Okay, so Opal says, contact those of us who started Caravana in Toronto to find out the history and learn how and why the original funds were taken away. Caravana brings in money to all tourist-like businesses and more in Toronto. Is that a question? I guess, yeah. A comment. Okay, yeah.
No,
Oh, you're in my
Sorry. Yeah.
saying that Opal is thinking this, but
the challenges I face is, when I first came in the carnival, everybody said, "Who's she? Who is she? I don't know her. Who is she?" I've spent my entire life in this festival, and so has, the people who came before me. So I have a lot of knowledge about its history and about the people who started it and why certain things have happened over the years and how they've lost funding and regained it and so on and so forth. But one of the things that at least we stand on today, and thanks so much for bringing that up, Opal, because there are stories, and some of them true, about the history. However, this festival continues and has been, just imagine every single year contributing this to government and having to figure out how you're going to pay people or how much staff can you get and how you're going to, I think it's a question later on, but the volunteers that we have, oh my goodness, including all the people who started this festival many, many years ago. But there's so many different pieces, and some of them are internal inside of our community that have happened that have also contributed to being where we're at today. So part of my job and part of the job of everybody that's there right now is just reestablishing the organization and the festival as what it is now, what it is today, and continues to be an economic driver, which of course, we all know government really cares about that, but it's important for our community too. But more importantly, for me is just my parents didn't have to get on a plane to teach me about where I came from and what we were about. It was literally right there. I lived in it. I ate the food. I was around the people. I know people who say when they first came to Canada, everybody told them, go to the Carnival. And when they got down there, they heard the accents and they were like, oh, I feel at home. And I'm like, man, listen to that. It's going to be different for the generations that come, but I know it's going to offer them something beautiful too. And no organization, I love that you said to the colonizers, I want to be politically correct. They go through that too. They also have the same issues we have, the exact same issues, but you may not see them in the news. You may not hear about them as loudly. Our community is very vocal. I love that about us, but sometimes we tear each other down in this process. So there are so many things that have contributed to where we're at today, but I can say for sure that the light at the end of the tunnel is blinding now. So I'm really looking forward to keeping this special festival and everything that it means alive for the next 58 years. And thank you, Opal.
Thank you, Mischka. Mischka, you commented earlier about something that I thought was very prophetic and profound. The amount of income that's generated and capital that's generated has no direct correlation to the funding. And there's a huge gap there. Right? Yeah, huge gap. And it is sometimes I think, what if we just take it somewhere else? What would they do then? Right? As my mom will always say, you don't know what you got till it's gone. Right? So obviously we're not going anywhere. We're here, and and we're taking up space. But that is obviously a big glaring issue. All right. I think Eunice has a question. We'll go to Eunice. Her hand is up. Eunice, go ahead. You can unmute yourself and ask your question. Go ahead, Eunice.
Oh, hi everyone. It's good to be in this space. My point pertaining to the question that was raised, I'm not so sure whether it's the time to respond to the question that is in the conversation, but I also think it is important to recognize that slavery repeats itself in so many ways. And now that we're talking about volunteerism and how it is exploited, my understanding of how the dynamic works is more of like it's the Black community enslaving their own, but it's not said directly to the Black community, simply because when the bigger systems remove themselves from accountability and kind of create volunteerism as a way of giving back to the community, not recognizing what all of you are saying about how striking the balance between work-life balance is a strain to those volunteering. I think it's a system that works for the bigger systems. And I'm saying that trying to hold some words because unfortunately, that environment of deny and at the same time give tokens kind of creates that strain between among the Black communities in more of like this not-for-profit organization is competing with the other not-for-profit organization because they are all safeguarding their own interest and funding streams. So what usually happens is that if I am running a not-for-profit organization, someone else is running a not-for-profit organization, I want to work towards safeguarding my interest because I don't want to lose my source. And so in that element, it creates unnecessary competition within the Black community that is not actually supposed to be there. But then that's also kind of encourages some kind of exploitation of volunteerism, not necessarily because the not-for-profit organizations are exploiting, but the dynamics within the system, they are reproducing that environment of exploiting the volunteers. And then again, coming back to the volunteer themselves, and especially coming from an immigrant perspective, you realize that the immigrants come with the hope that they will end up in the Canadian labor market. And so when that does not happen, every immigrant outside there will look for an avenue that may usher them to either accumulating knowledge that is going to usher them to the Canadian labor market. And in the process, they realize that even after they create, even after they are exposed to not-for-profit organizations, for the most immigrants, through volunteering, you realize that it ends up reproducing that culture of exploitation, at the same time creating that awareness. So it's a tough balance of trying to navigate exploitation and at the same time some different contemporary models of exploitation that can be related to modern slavery. Thank you.
Very well said, Eunice. On Zoom too, and I like the part that, or the enlightenment that you provided of the importance of people doing volunteer work trying to get into the Canadian job market. And as we know, a lot of employers are always looking for that aspect of it, but it also goes into another form of exploitation of volunteerism. So I was going to go to our next question, but you want to ask?
Governments and stuff like that. Xavier mentioned how the system isn't set up for us to win. And so we're operating in a system that's already working against us. And in talking about like the different non-for-profits and doing the work and creating competition amongst each other, that's what they want, right? And so if they're going to give Xavier funding, Xavier has an in with the government. They have his ear, he has their ear to some degree. You two are also doing the same work he's doing, but Xavier wants to protect the funding he's getting. So he's going to lean more towards what it is that they want, right? And they'll continue to give him the funding, and he'll continue to safeguard what it is that they're doing because he wants the funding for his organization. You may think that, okay, well, I'm helping my people, so it doesn't matter, but you two are also helping your people, right? And instead of us to stand together and unite against the government, it's that kind of like, I want to say that house slave versus outside slave mentality where it's, I rather kind of be the butler inside than be out in the fields. And if I can continue to, I want to say, what's the reference, Django even, where the butler is there helping Massa, like to know who's trying to run away, who's trying to do this, and you better stay in line. And why? Because he gets a little bit more better treatment than the rest of them. You're still the N-word, I don't want to say it, but you're still a little bit better than the ones outside, even though you're all the same and you're all being treated badly, you know? And so these are the things I think we're struggling with. And it was said that slavery is still happening. The colonial mindset is still happening. And we need to break free of that. We need to understand each other and help each other and build together, and that they're not for us. I don't care what they say. I don't care how much. And in Ghana, we say something small for the boys. Like you give them something small to let pacify them. We have to get out of that mindset because there is so much more. How can you have a carnival that generates so much money for the city and they're giving sprinkles of that and thinking they're doing something? What if we take it away? Then what? You know what I mean? And these are the conversations that we have to have and coming together and stop like working in silos and working against each other for a system that is working also against us.
Thank you. Any other comments? I know Tatiana's writing down notes. I don't know if she wants to make any comment before we move on. Okay, hold on. I think I'll go to Tatiana first. Just because
Yeah, well, I feel like I was going to respond to this in the second question, but since both Eunice and since both Eunice and Afia mentioned it, this idea, and I think that Eunice kind of emphasized exploitation. I myself take a more strengths-based approach. And I know that's very hard when you feel like you have nothing. That's kind of my job, like to let folks see the potential. Most managers nowadays are uplifting and empowering the folks that they work with. We all make different sacrifices. But anyway, Eunice used the word exploitation, but I really feel like there's a bigger conversation around managing expectations. I'm going to elaborate a little bit more on some guiding principles I established for this organization, given my business, education and ethics and law, and how that's informing how I work. But to your point, I think that one of the C's, I often say, BQIC, it speaks to who we serve, but it also speaks to how we work. And that's C in terms of collective, Black Queer Youth Collective, for those that might have missed the intro. For those, that's C, that speaks to collective. We talk a lot about collective care. We talk a lot about consensus. And in our work, collaboration over competition. So for what that means for me, given the uniqueness of my work, is if I know there are, and I've been to York University on a few occasions, first time here at the Tubman Institute, the Harriet Tubman Institute, but nonetheless, for me, it's about seeing how different sectors work internally, and then where are opportunities for me to engage in that work. So there are a lot of folks doing work around arts. I know you mentioned sports. Shout out to Liebert at the Urban League of Canada. They're also doing work around sports. So with that, it's not so much, I don't necessarily take the approach of we are competing for resources, because those that have worked intimately with me know I would write a letter of support faster than I would write a competing grant. It's a waste of time for us to have grants and then still deal with funding shortages. I prefer you have a strong application, and I'll do what I can to ensure the project is successful. And in turn, I expect that reciprocity. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that when it comes to youth leadership and my call in terms of empowering. But that's kind of what I wanted. That's kind of what was landing heavy on me. Managing expectations. We don't necessarily, when it comes to managing expectations, it's not exploitation. If there are limitations, it's more important to be transparent about what the limitations are, even if it's financial. And also to let folks know when there are resources that they will be fairly compensated. But you cannot expect one thing, I don't sit here, like going back to what X said, I don't sit here, well, I mean, I have my private stuff, so I'm going to share that. But I don't sit here in a position where I feel like, my lived reality is very different from a Black LGBTQ youth who is experiencing homelessness, a Black LGBTQ youth who's dealing with mental health distress because of social exclusion, because of rejection, family rejection. In fact, in our peer-led model, our peer support model, we talk a lot about how those things unite. It allows for comfort to discuss trauma and distress. If you're, I did get do up for y'all today, but if your reality appears so disconnected from your service user, it's very unlikely that they'll be honest and transparent about what they're dealing with. Nonetheless, we're going to talk about that. I know we only have half an hour, but I'm sorry for elaborating so long, but there's so much to talk about that collaboration and over competition and expectation in terms of managing expectations.
Super, super fast. I don't love the word, but I've learned to use it, that word exploitation, in certain rooms. They don't want to hear it, but I use it. And I've seen movement because of it. Sometimes we're put into positions where we feel we can't say or use certain words depending on the room you're in. One of the things that always comes up is, should the carnival just say, no, we're not doing it? It is so complicated that I just want to share it with everybody. That should never happen. It should never, ever happen. For one, what we have is so unique. We were a first mover outside of the Caribbean to have something like this. It was a unique moment in time where there were droves of immigrants coming to Canada, and this thing happened. If we were to cut it, and I share this with my stakeholders, if we were to say we're not doing this and boycott, we will be harming ourselves. We will be jeopardizing that ecosystem, the families, everybody who relies on this. And even when I think about myself as a young person growing up, the carnival allowed me to be a performer, to feel proud of myself, to be with my family. So it's not something that's on our minds in thinking how we maneuver and how we do things. Like, should we not have the carnival and show them? That's not it. However, everything that we're doing is about becoming financially self-sufficient, so we don't have to rely on government funding. However, I still believe, and I say, they still should be funding us, but we don't want to have to be in the scenarios that we're experiencing right now.
Mischka, don't cut off your nose to spite your face. Yeah, says thank you. All right, let's go to question number 2. We could talk all day about each question with these enlightenment thinkers that we have on our panel. All right, young people. We are in a university institution, post-secondary institution that is filled with young people. And young people are often at the forefront of social movements. Yet they face significant risk within university institutions, including academic penalties, surveillance, and financial insecurity. And haven't we seen that over the last few years? So we asked the panel, how can academic institutions and community organizations better recognize their expertise as movement leaders while providing tangible supports to ensure their activism is both impactful and sustainable? We will start with X at the end, and then we'll just go back down.
So this brings up about, I don't even know how many years of academic trauma of my own. And then I also work at an organization. It's my life's work though, so I think I just ended up here because I'm supposed to. But it's called Parents of Black Children. We really work to advocate for Black families in the Ontario education system. This question again was one of those questions where it hit me differently, because I will say this to you. If you've made it to post-secondary education and you're Black, you're about 75% of the way done. Don't let them dissuade you now. Because I'm sure that on your journey through elementary school and secondary school, you saw a lot of your peers that looked like you not reach where you've reached. It's my American upbringing that's making me think about this thing called the talented 10th. I don't know if you guys know about it, but the talented 10th is like this idea that there's this upper class of being Black, this talented 10th percent, this 10% of, you know? And I could be completely butchering it, but this is how we learned it in New York when I was growing up. I think it has something to do with either Du Bois' debate about, you know, should we stay in America, or Garvey's argument that we should go back to Africa. So the talented 10th comes into play. And what I'll say about that is, once you've reached this part, you've already achieved more than 30% of your counterparts who drop out by grade 10 that are Black youth. You're already putting yourself on a pathway towards success. But a lot of that, again, is false, because we know how these systems are set up. So can I tell you the honest truth that when I hear this question, I think about my operations manager teacher at Seneca College, who, because of the way I presented myself and the way I conducted myself, I'm smart, but I don't look like I care. I don't look like I'm interested. But maybe because my mind's on other things too while I'm still doing this. And the level of embarrassment that he gave to me one day, although I wasn't embarrassed, I really didn't care. But he told me in front of my whole class that I wasn't going to do anything and I wasn't going to be anything. I thought that was going to stop in elementary school, or maybe the guidance office at high school, where I still experienced those things anyways. When I got it in college, and then because I really didn't care, when I walked out of class, I'm walking to go do my thing, and my classmates are like, Xavier, I can't believe he did that to you. You need to go report it, blah, blah, blah. I don't believe in these reporting mechanisms. I don't believe in a lot of what goes on here. So I didn't pursue it. I just let it inform my practices throughout the rest of my life. There are so many Black youth who will never make it to this part. And we're talking about labor. So I want you to understand why I say the system is working the way it's supposed to. If you experienced the 932 cases that I've experienced over the last 3 school years and this school year as well too, you would understand that the system is really working the way it's set out to work. And when you see people send emails that they shouldn't have sent to you, describing how they as administrators are defrauding the government of funds using Black bodies to bring in funding that they're going to use for non-Black students, resources for Black bodies that they're going to use for non-Black students. You're going to tell me that that isn't how the system actually operates and isn't the hidden curriculum and hidden part of the system? Walking in today, I hear about a case where a father put a recording device in his autistic child, nonverbal, their clothes to record what's going on at the school. The school left the child out of the school, 4 years old, in the freezing cold, and the kid ended up, feeling like frostbite and stuff, goes back into the school and is crying and complaining, because you can hear this all on the recording, crying and complaining about the fact that his hands are cold and whatever. Kindergarten child. So the kindergarten class doesn't have warm water because we don't want the kids to burn themselves. And then just so happens that the educator who is responsible for leaving him outside ends up getting approached by the principal near the bag that has the recording device in it. The principal begins to, it seems like, berate the teacher for what they did to the child, until you hear later on in the conversation, okay, this is how we're going to cover it up. We're going to say that the PA system was broken. You didn't hear the call about. This is all recorded. This is just one case. This is nothing compared to the other cases that we deal with.
Oh, it's a lawsuit too.
Oh, it's a lawsuit. It's a lawsuit. But I just want you guys to understand that the system is operating the way it's supposed to operate. And every time that we achieve, every time we do well, we are flying in the face of the system. And that's what the goal is. Until we can figure out another way, that's what the goal is in this present moment. Because we that fly in the face of the system provide hope to those who are actually going to tear down the system. I may not have what it takes to tear it down, but I'm going to incite the mind that tears it down.
Wow. That last piece about you're going to inspire and incite the mind that is going to tear it down. Everything I do is about the next generation. There is not a moment, Kamani's in the room, he's so cute. There's not a moment that I am not thinking about who's going to come next and what I've seen and faced, how shocking it is, even though we shouldn't be shocked. And to think about, I don't have kids, but I have a 3-year-old nephew. And when I hear stories like this, I have young Black men in my family who are autistic or neurodiverse. We come in many shapes, sizes, and ways and abilities. And when I hear how we're treated, our young people, it's the most painful thing for any of us to even understand, because at that age, you have your life ahead of you and you don't have the knowledge, the skills, and the experience to understand what is happening to you, to be able to process it in a way that it will allow you to keep going. As when you're 4, 5, 6, 7, someone tells you that, you got to believe it. They're in charge of you. So that whole at-home piece, I don't have any of the answers to. Let me just say that. I think we all think that. But when I think about young people being the activists, being the ones who are going to break some of what we're dealing with, academic institutions need to understand the plight of a Black student. Like you said, maybe for whatever reason why they think you appear to not care, or whatever that is, to challenge themselves, to know you don't understand the culture or the background, the everything, to have the context, or to want to see this person differently. And it sucks because, like you said, we all in this room this is the talented 10th. The fact that you're sitting here listening to this, a part of it, shows you that. And we have such a duty to stand up with that calling and to keep going, to ensure that these young people see the people like us doing it and can advocate further than we do. But I do see with the schools, for sure, especially when I think about academic penalties. I remember my first year of university, my first semester, feeling like, man, I suck at this. And also barely passing a class and getting an email about, you're going to be on academic probation, and not understanding, where I'm coming from in my life, the financial challenges of myself, my mom, and my sister paying for this, whether you have to work or not, all of that stuff, just not starting it with a conversation versus being informed of how you've not met the mark and how you process that as a racialized person. All of that needs to be considered, the psychology of it. All of that is the treatment that we are continue to have to overcome. And I'll just really quickly, we talk about safe spaces. Like, I don't know. I would love to see a safe space acknowledgement be given at the beginning of things that we do, as well as the land acknowledgement. And in the carnival, we're trying to implement that, because I don't think there are safe spaces for us and for our kids. There just isn't. To speak up, to advocate for yourself, you are the one against 100 in the room all the time. So speaking up as a young person, we have to protect them. We have to try to make a way for them. I encourage anybody to reach out to me, reach out to the carnival, because we're your mentors too. We are here and we want to support you. And the last example I'll give about saying we're still facing it. I'm 2 months away from completing my executive MBA here at York. And yeah, thank you. I'm so proud. It's the biggest gift I've ever given myself. But I applied to multiple schools. And I'll tell you that there was one institution, they were very firm, and they said, we don't think you should be in the executive class. You got to go to the normal EMBA. And it's not to say anything, but there's less experience required, and they're younger in that class as well. They said that's where you should go. And if you can't commit to that, then you should do the evening and weekend EMBA. It's going to take me 4 years, whatever. They didn't see me as being in the same caliber as the other executives in the class. When I came to York, a school that I see the efforts to have an understanding of the racialized experience, completely different experience in the interview. It was, we are so glad you applied here. We really want, wow, we know what the carnival is. We could only imagine. They had such a different understanding of what I did, what it means to run an organization like that. Yes, it's nonprofit, but it's a business. And they welcomed me. So it's experiences like that too that we still have to deal with, even though you're doing great things. Some people are still shutting the door and slapping you in the face and saying you're not good enough. It still happens. So yeah, talking to yourself is such a good thing to do. Just telling yourself that you got it, keep going. Using everything you guys are saying, I've been writing it down. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to start saying that to myself a little bit more, because we rely on each other to keep going.
Wow. I wasn't expecting to get emotional.
It is emotional.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's even interesting. I hate this dynamic, and I'm going to use the word hate because it's not being the most affirming for me. When I talk about this dynamic, I'm talking about how Blackness at multiple intersections show up in the world, and how there's this need to create a monolith or a single story, a single identity. For this question specifically, it's like I feel like I'm now being removed from community, and we talk about how we show up in spaces. We talk about these invisible lines, or as you framed it, I've never heard of it, the talented tent. That hits hard. That hits so hard because I'm one of the young students who were top of my class from primary school. I was the honor student. I enjoyed it. I studied, I studied business in high school. For those of you who may not know, I'm originally from Bahamas, so I studied academic business to be precise. And we have our GC system, of which I got an A in math.
Wow.
So I never thought of it, growing up on the island, we are all taking the same exams. I never thought of myself as being better than or in a different league than my classmates. We all have strengths. For those of us that were, I don't know if they still have it, what we call top achievers. It was kind of a thing in the Bahamas. But yeah, for the top achievers or our junior achievers, JA, we would meet each other from different schools. So typically, your class, but top achievers is like across the island, junior achievers is across the country. It's like you meet the academics or the top achievers from different islands, and that was beautiful. But thinking about this now in this context, and this is why I get a little emotional, because on one hand, I have to honor my reality. I have to honor what I aspired to become and also my natural strengths. But then there's also folks who may have not reached their potential or may have not had the same ease. They would have not had the same, the information that was taught may have not been as accessible to them. So I am a very cognitive person, and hence why I think the way that I do and I speak the way that I do. But that does not mean I don't understand the ways in which our communities speak. And we talk about code switching.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, I feel like it's me unpacking what has got me to this place, but also thinking about where other folks are at in their journey and how to get them to a place where they're sitting at a shared table, which is our board. Yes, with that in mind, I actually did consider doing an EMBA. I applied. Well, I didn't really apply. There's a pre-application for Sam Smith University, the Rutgers University, and here at York. I was going to do it in Canada. However, I decided to actually do some professional development at Harvard, which is still, these are the dynamics, and my team do in our meetings. I process that because it's like there's like this guilt of wanting to aspire, and I'm like, we all can shine as stars. Like, I don't have to dim my light for you to shine, and I don't want you to feel like you have to compete with me in order for you to excel. So when I think about the future work, I think a lot of what, like I said, as a manager, a lot of what I'm trying to do is empower folks, because I know that most folks, I don't know if it's just here in North America, but folks seem to struggle with logical thinking, with math. They struggle with it. Those who know me know, the Gen Zers, those of you on this call, or if this was recorded, I think the Gen Zers, I think there has been what I would say a deterioration in terms of reading comprehension. These are just concerns given the times where I'm noticing, I guess I have my pet peeves being indoctrinated in a colonial system that told you had to think and speak a particular way. So there are things that I'm the type of person, like if I make a typo, trust and believe I'll correct that typo. Some would be like, oh, I didn't even notice. But if I notice it, I'm inclined to correct that. And I had to learn to be gentle on myself. And we're going to talk a little bit about self-care. But as it pertains to the youth themselves, I think that's the big internal reckoning that I have. Understanding that there are youth who may have not completed high school. There are folks who now we're describing it as having cognitive disabilities. There are folks who think and speak and articulate their thoughts in different ways that can create abrasion because it's not in the standard, in the norm. I guess I'm flexible enough to adjust, but I do think that there are standard processes as well. So when it comes to, as a community organizer, as an organizational leader, recognizing the potential of youth, that's kind of where I'm sitting. Because I'm sitting with the reality that a lot of Black youth here in Canada that I'm exposed to, specifically in Toronto, have not. I mean, our team in the past, actually, I'm always shocked because this is where there's also that reckoning. I'm like, when you talk about these cliques, in the past, our leadership team, our advisory team, had folks who would have completed, bachelor's of psychology, neuroscience, bachelor's of neuroscience. And it's such a disconnect, a far disconnect from some of our service users. So it's like, how do we share space? And I think, given that internal warfare that I've dealt with, we talk about that. I don't allow them to sit in the space and not acknowledge what we would consider the diversity in terms of class and access. But there's also kind of the folks who may want to be in those leadership positions and they don't apply. They don't think they themselves don't even see themselves in the position. And that's where, with my current team, I was saying that's where I've done the call to action. For those of you who are interested in our work, please visit our website. We completed a community needs assessment, and one of the priorities for our future work is investing in education and training opportunities. And I started with what I would say, we're piloting this early career executive team. Unlike an EMBA, it's not with the universities, it's actually with the Toronto Public Library to get more Black youth in project management, because I feel like whilst we can honor your individuality and your uniqueness, business is still very structured. There are protocols and policies, and it protects us legally, ethically. So I need more Black youth to understand kind of business fundamentals. And I want them to have that certificate. I want them to have something that says, you are a business professional, because as an organizational leader, I can provide you an employment opportunity where you can demonstrate your leadership. So it's so much in terms of providing tangible supports to folks who may have not even been considered for leadership opportunities, and empowering them and encouraging, promoting education, promoting literacy. I feel like I don't know what's being taught. I'm not in the educational system. We do have some partnerships we're working on with the Toronto District School Board and York District School Board, but the illiteracy in the community is very pronounced. And I think maybe I need to adjust, but I'm like, no, I'm not, and me and my team, we talk about the Sambo. They have dumbed down the community. And I think it was intentional for our community, but it's across multiple communities now. When you look at how people write, how they speak, are they able to do basic calculations? Chances are they're not. Penmanship. We have these devices, but can people actually legibly write? You can write, but is it legible? Can someone understand what you're writing? These are things I would say the essence of this time, but it's also a notion that I think is potentially problematic in the future, because when we talk about like creative spelling, for those of you who may not know, is I think it's rooted in a place where you want to affirm folks, but I think when you make mistakes, you can correct a mistake opposed to affirming something that's incorrect. I think that's kind of the pathway. Maybe that's why I'm not called to teach, because maybe I'm not called to teach because I'm probably going to be the teacher that instills more robust traditional way of doing things. And that may not always mean pandering or sharing feedback, especially in areas where I think there can be improvements. But yeah, those are my thoughts in terms of youth leadership and kind of how me as an organizational leader is promoting that in the BQIC. And also, what's the standard? An opportunity for those who, like I said, if young people want to be project managers, you can apply for the certification, and definitely you'll then have access to opportunities. You don't have to do the EMBA because that's $125,000. No. They need to know the price because it's not accessible when you think of costs. But you can definitely still become a working professional based on your career aspirations.
It's so crazy to also be in these positions and do the work and for people to look down on you. And part of my even decision to do it is a part of ensuring that I'm walking into rooms and people are going to listen to what I have to say and take it with some weight. And that's not fair either.
And I actually like that you said that. I'm going to say something personal. I was a gifted student. The reason why they found out I was gifted was because they thought I had a developmental delay. So I want to express that to you again. I was a gifted student, intellectually gifted, and the only reason why the Ontario education system found out was because they thought I had a developmental delay. Because my teachers, I'm not going to give the reasons. My teachers didn't like me. And I'll be honest about it. My teachers didn't like me. They didn't like the way that I represented. They didn't like the fact that they had an intellectual Black boy in their classroom who could question things and ask questions, who could incite the classroom to think and provoke thought and those kind of things. So this is what I will say, because there were some things that were said that I want to express the other side of it. This is what I want to express. There are so many Black youth who are so disenfranchised from their education, but have so much intellect that when you look at them and when you speak to them, you will think that they don't know as much as they do know. There were studies done as to why 9/11 happened. What they found out in these studies is that, because I think what they found out in the 9/11 stuff was that those people, the young people who were a part of that, they never lived on the other side of the world and were indoctrinated with those beliefs because that's where they grew up and that was their culture. They were from North America. So why did they want to attack North America? And what they found out was this, and judge it in your own family. First generation of immigrants does fairly well. The generation that follows right after them, so their children, tend to do well. That third generation fails. Why? And part of what they found out was it's because oppression wears on you. It wears away at you. When a young person sees their parent come home every day and complain about the job, complain about their colleagues, complain about the environment, do you think that young person wants to invest in being a part of that environment? When you see an intellectual back home you're an engineer, back home you're a doctor, you come over here and you have to drive Uber, you think that their children don't internalize that? When you go to a classroom, one of my other cases this week, a Black child, Black girl, mom finds out middle of just the second semester is about to start or is started. Why is my daughter in locally developed math in grade 9? Because I just found out that locally developed math means that she's not going to be able to go to university. Because a guidance counselor sat with her in her grade 8 year without her parents, because this is how the process happens in colonized places, in colonized spaces like this. The parents weren't involved. Mom had no idea that her daughter's future was limited because her daughter was ignorant as a child and sat in a meeting with adults who, in their best interest and their best determination, said, "You don't really like math, do you?" "No, not that much." "Not how good are you at it? Not how competent? Not how logical? Just what are your feelings about it? You don't like it? Maybe you should do a lesser math." And is that child going to ask, will that allow me to move on further? No. So what I want, and somebody said this to me as well too, in a workshop that I was a part of recently. They said, understand the difference between the angry Black person and the tolerable Black person. And know that society wants tolerable Blacks. So those who are going to be pushed forward in education and all those different things. But there's spaces where we need to be the tolerable Black person. But there are many more spaces where we need to be the angry Black person. And we need to respect each other and respect our journeys and how we got to where we got to. Like what you said with your staff, how you make sure they understand the differences in the room and speak to those differences and speak life into those differences. But just understand that colonialism, and remember, I come from Jamaica, Mafia Sitad. They've tried to colonize my mind. And every single day, in every single thing that I do, guess what I got a question? Because you said a word, tradition. Whose tradition? The colonizers or my own? And a lot of these traditions are not my own traditions. My traditions were ripped away from me. I'm a Jamaican. When I did my 23andMe, I found out I'm predominantly Nigerian and West African. What do I know about Nigerian and West African traditions? Only because I went through my rites of passage. God save me. And that's still not enough. So I just want us to be very cautious that it's not just our people who are weeding themselves out of the system. It is the system who has weeded us out. And some of us just don't have time for it. And I can tell you this too. I love the fact that you're doing your EMBA. I love it. And I love the fact that you chose not to. And I love the fact that you went back to school for law school, because I was thinking about doing it. And you know the reason why I don't do certain things? Because I say to myself, one, just so you know, here in North America, typos and all that stuff, you're going to get it more from non-Black people than you will from Black people, because of how much we second guess ourselves. But yet our education wasn't given to us by Black people, right? So I just want it to be clear that it is not a lack of effort, a lack of engagement, a lack of trying. It is that we are being weeded out, and we are being told what is an acceptable way of being. And so you can see it in schools. That's why I talked about the talented 10th when we talked about this portion of things. If you've made it to university, just find some mentors, find some people that can help push you through and all that stuff, because you've made it so far. Don't give up. But there are 75% under you that just didn't make it. And it really is incumbent upon you to create the systems so that they can make it. First thing I try to do is employ my Black people, because I saw when I was playing basketball in high school, it was the only reason why they liked me and let me stay in school. I wrote an essay about the racism in Canada. My teacher brought it to the principal to recommend me being expelled. And the only reason in grade 12 why I was not expelled by that principal wasn't because of my intellect. It was because of my value. I was a starter on the basketball team at our school. So I just want you guys to see how these systems work. Whew.
We said we wouldn't go deep.
How extraordinary is this panel? I'm just getting chills listening to this. Big round of applause for that question. And we have a question from one of our before we go to our third question. Time is flying, and we have one more question. I just want to comment quickly on something Xavier said earlier about the talented 10th. So thank you for bringing that to our enlightenment. And the 932 cases that are not being broadcasted on the evening news. So who is doing that work? And flying in the face of the system, hoping to inspire and to educate those who will tear down the system. Thank you for that, X. Mischka, I don't know if you know, but we are recording this. So all those 10, 15, 20 pages of notes, you can also refer to later on. But I want to thank you for inspiring, educating, and empowering the next generation, and that being your purpose. And from me to you, I really want to thank you for the place that has changed my life, and for you putting power to words of how great York University is. We are far from perfect, but we are better than most.
Listening. My mom like, Mom, you're gonna know money. But you know what? The truth actually is, I'm not paying for it.
I'm alone and my family. Holy smokes. God bless my family. Not everybody has a family that will say, come live with us. You don't have to pay rent, or we'll feed you, or these things. Between that and my family is allowing me this opportunity. And that is also part of that story about why so many of us we don't have the opportunity. Like, I got this support even to get a loan. I have my beautiful aunt co-signing for me. They're like, all our business. Yes.
Because this is what the community needs.
Hear this. You know, my aunt has co-signed for a line of credit, a student line of credit, so I can do this program. and my family, my mother and my aunt are supporting me so that I could do it because I can't afford to do it.
How important is family and community?
For bringing
And lastly, just to quickly, I didn't realize we had a star in our midst here in Tatiana, both on and off the court, or on inside and outside the classroom, all the way from Bahamas. And I loved how you said that you don't let people sit in spaces and not acknowledge the class disparity. I thought that was very, very powerful. Thank you, panel. Oh, I'm just getting chills listening to you. All right, last question, and I don't know if we'll have any time for any other questions, but last but not least, and Tatiana referred to this earlier about self-care, which is so important. And one of the great things that come out of the pandemic is this focus on mental health and self-care. So question number 3, Audre Lorde has said that caring for yourself is not self-indulgence. Rather, it's self-preservation. It's an act of political warfare. I know that each of you on this panel have made extreme sacrifices, and I've seen the toll that it can take on individuals. With that in mind, what does it mean to you to do this work as a Black man or a Black woman, and how do you prioritize caring for yourself? We'll start right here in the middle.
This is a really tough one. I can honestly say that I haven't taken care of myself. That's the truth of it. I absolutely haven't. And it's hard. There are days of, I'm sure you guys experience it and you go through it in your own way, of crying, of feeling like I'm not strong enough, I can't do this, all of the thoughts that run through your mind, and the difficulties of trying to do something that you feel is on behalf of other people. I'm really trying to put some boundaries down. It's the best word to use. But really what it looks like is I just can't. I get text messages, people contact you, probably Instagram, there's emails, there's phone calls. Like, I just had to make certain choices for myself that I feel like my community gets the brunt of what that feels like. I think we went out. I've done little things for myself that are very my environment. Should I speak louder? Yeah. And the first one is like, I just don't answer when I'm busy, which is all day. I don't answer my phone. Other people do, and it is a part of my job, but I just had to say I can't, because what's on the other end of this phone call, for the most part, is just gonna send me into a bad place. That's what we say. We're like, no, it's gonna put me in a bad place. So I don't answer my phone. I answer my phone calls that I know who it is. I've scheduled it. I know phone calls from phone numbers don't get answered. If it's work related, they're gonna have to send me. If you have my phone number, you have my email. And that also hurts me because there are people I meet that they go, I've been calling you, and I just tell them, I go, I'm really sorry. I've got about 92 missed calls, and I can't do it. I cannot be the place that everybody gets to offload on or dump or criticize or complain to. It's really hard. And being empathetic people, which I think you have to be, the jobs are so painful. This job is very painful. Just listening to you guys speak, it hurts when you hear about how we're being treated, how our kids are being treated. So there's that. The second thing I've realized is how important it is to have joy. Oh my goodness. I think I have to bring myself back. I'm like, why are you doing this work, Mischka? I'm like, yeah, I want to see my people be further liberated, to live in joy. I want to see us celebrating, laughing, living life, everything. And I have to remind myself to take time to do that. And this is like one of those experiences. It's like, yeah, you have to leave the office. Yeah, you have to be away from work. There's going to be things waiting for you, but there's also so much joy and camaraderie and strength that I get from you know, sitting in between you two and also seeing the faces of everybody here. I know how much we all like, we just get each other. And that is so important for that like support and also to not feel so weighed down. And the last thing is just keeping your eye on that long-term vision, that whatever utopian world it is, I'm listening to you speak and it's like, you're talking about something that it doesn't exist, but you're creating it in a room with the people that you're with. And you're talking about it in ways that are so frank that people can't ignore what you're saying. It's important. We need that type of eloquence as well. So just keeping your eye on that long-term vision, the legacy that of the work that you're doing, because we aren't going to see and feel it in our time here. I know that the work that I'm doing is going to hit 15 years from now, or maybe even longer. And hopefully people will, they may not remember me or talk about my name, but in the same way, I know that I'm standing on 50 something years of work and of sacrifice. I remember them, I speak highly of them, and it's my duty to, an honor to be able to keep going in this. And my family, man, those are the people that have to see me at my worst. They probably think, please stop doing this job. It's difficult, you know, for my mother to see me all 7 days of a vacation for a funeral, you know, working and crying, you know, and suffering and being up late at night and just feeling lost. It's really hard for them. So just taking care of my family and them taking care of me and trying to include them as much as I can in what's going on, them joining these conversations so that they can hear about what other people are doing and feel proud of me and of us, I think is so important to have that self-care. Be proud of yourself.
Yes. Yeah. You know, I think that those of us that are doing this work, when we think about even engaging or ushering in the next generation of leaders, we do so from a place of care where you don't want them to, you know, sometimes people assume that you're making a lot of money because of the position you're in. You know, sometimes, you know, you mentioned the degree, but you didn't mention the cost. No, you got to mention the cost. There is a big price. There's a big price. And when I think about even self-care, you don't learn that until you've burnt out, until you have been broken. Hey, you know?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I'm probably the youngest on this panel. So what do I know but being burnt out? Well, I'm in a role where I'm burnt out. I've had to, like in 2023, I took almost a year off because I had to recalibrate. Or for those that may not know that word, I had to rethink about how I do this work. Boundaries, professional boundaries. How much can I give? And in doing that, I really thought about the why. On one hand, so like, you know, being, like I said, I feel like there's that same class of people that's called to do this work. You see the intentions, you see the motivation, the passion, the joy, and you see when they're struggling. And that's when I lift them up. And actually, like I said, even though I have been burnt out, I feel like I'm back. I'm back and I'm ready. See, they caught me. When I burnt out in 2021, 2022, I wasn't ready. It was the pandemic. The community needed me. I needed to go over and beyond. I was not prepared at all. As a millennial, that was the first major global crisis I've experienced. It did take me down. But coming out of it, you know, I remind my team something that really I still think about is diamonds are formed under pressure. And there was this kind of, I deal with internal critique, where they say you can't get blood from a rock. I guess speaking to stubbornness. Yeah. I'm like, don't mistake a rock for a diamond. Don't do that. And that's what I'm seeing. Even when we talk about the histories of community organizing in Canada, who have tapped out because they've been burnt, or they feel slated, or the work was just so overwhelming they chose to disengage. These are those of you, well, most of you would not know, but in our team, I'm looking for those hidden gems. I'm looking for those unheard voices. And I think that that's going to prepare me to deal with what I've not yet experienced. And that ultimately is a form of self-preservation, because now I know what to expect. When something comes at you and you don't expect it, it takes you, it could take you all the way back. It could really take you down. But yeah, for me, I think that self-care in doing this work, self-preservation, it is showing up. It is, like I said, I've had to learn the formalities of business, apply it in a profit sector that is not really generating any income, but it is what I would say, even when we talk about this great wealth transfer. A lot of Black people here in Canada, and we're brothers, we're kins, of one kind, the humankind or mankind. But there isn't a great transfer of wealth, financial resources in Black communities. So it's great, Mischka, that you have that. A lot of folks don't, and therefore that limits what they think is possible in the future. I think we have to shift that mindset. So I feel like I don't even know which part of my brain. Usually I would be like, oh, I'm like a left brain, I'm a logical thinker, I'm all of this. But I learned that I've had to be more creative in how I deal with issues, in how I understand problems, in how I unpack the roots and deal with systems of oppression. And also how I pour back into myself. So for me, as a femme, I do enjoy, I guess on a more lighter note, I do enjoy physical activities. So I do go to the gym, I go in the sauna, and I just sit in silence, maybe sometimes listening to music. I cycle. And these are what I would consider mini looks, like mini luxuries that anyone can afford, but not everyone prioritize. And with that in mind, I'm going to send it to X, because we talked a lot about prioritization, and we have to prioritize ourselves, but we also cannot ignore the issues, So yeah, thank you.
Brain to start taking some notes. I'm gonna be quick because 4 minutes and you need 2 of them. So I'm gonna be 2 minutes for you, okay? Here's what I'm gonna say. No. I like respecting people's time. I'll give you my practical answer first. My practical answer is this. I break down self-care because I've been burnt out before when I was much younger, 40 now. So I know what the experience is like. But I break it down to 3 R's: rest, relaxation, and recreation. Rest is different from relaxation because relaxation is active, it's just slow. Rest is non-active. And recreation is very active. Recreation for me, when I officiated, the reason why nothing ever bothered me on the court was because I have bigger problems in the world. So when parents are yelling, I don't care. What is that? Yo, it's a game, brother. Like, this means nothing. Coaching. I coach sports. So when I get to impart my knowledge back onto young people, oh my God, that's my happiest moments. And then before my sciatica, which is a terribly debilitating back injury, I used to weightlift a lot. I don't weightlift as much now, but since I became a phys ed teacher, I started weightlifting again with my students. And so that's what I do for my recreation: sports, weightlifting, just having fun like that. Relaxation. So, personal story, right at the beginning of the pandemic, we were supposed to have a daughter. She passed away at 22 weeks. I've spent my whole life working with young people in hopes of when I have my child, that I've paved the way for them to be in the world because daddy did some work for them. Losing that child was very mentally debilitating for me and my wife. What I found is a great form of relaxation: 2 things. These 2 things saved me. Gardening? I live in an apartment building. Who's gardening in an apartment building? But my balcony is full up. Tomatoes, cucumbers, whatever. And I took your time. I'm sorry. My next one out of gardening is walking because it's slow. But I never walked in my community. And when I walked in I'm like, yo, them big houses around the corner and whoa, that park is there. And it did so much for me. I'm going to stop talking so you can talk real quick. Don't forget then. Good. So that's my relaxation. Another huge thing for my relaxation, a store called Lush. Oh, yeah. Oh my God. You know what? Shower gels, Scrubby. Try Scrubby one day. Scrubby's beautiful. It's exfoliation and the softness at the same time. Just the best thing. Some days when I just feel like the day was hard, I just give myself a nice shower, a nice smell good shower, and it just stays with me. Lush. And then rest. There's a spa called Go Place Spa. My wife took me there for my birthday. Lord, the best thing if you ever want to get treated like royalty for a day, if you ever want to show somebody you love them, send them there. You go in, you take off your shoes, they give you your slippers. You walk into your change room, you're greeted nicely. It smells nice. All the free amenities. It's just treat yourself. I think doing this work and being a part of the tribe that I'm a part of, we don't treat ourselves enough. But I will tell you, warriors treat themselves too. So just because you're out on the battlefield don't mean you can't take a moment to enjoy something sweet. Treat yourself. Treat yourself, treat yourself, treat yourself. Because how you treat yourself will in turn be how you treat others. My sister.
No problem. We have a question.
Kira, I'm a grad student here at York in social anthropology. I like that you brought up Go Place. It's too good. I fell asleep and had to pay the overnight fee. But yeah, I'm really wary when it comes to self-care conversations, especially of how they came out of the pandemic, because I feel like self-care has really been commodified and moved away from what Audre Lorde has said about, you care for yourself so you can care for community. So like thinking of these things like people paying into therapy or these big wellness retreats, like, it's nice for the week that you spend there, but what are you doing to bring back those tactics to the community, right? So I think we also have to think about how is your care being reciprocal. And to your point about being a diamond, there's a softness about me, and I do not want to be a diamond. I don't want to be a hard stone of any kind. I want to be a sapling, like a tree. We weather the storms, we keep growing, but we're never hardened. We share roots with others and we communicate with others, but in the way that diamonds just clink against each other, And to your point about parents and children talking down on the system and like the jobs that they hold. I just wonder, how do we escape if we're not being critical and dreaming bigger, and if we're constantly trying to fit within the system or navigate a system that wasn't built for us? So what are we doing to not only criticizing the system to our children, but what are we doing to remind them that that criticism comes with action that has to be taken to change it, or not just change it, but abolish it and go beyond it? And how do we dream and implement futures where we're not forced to be a diamond?
Yeah. Any other questions? We have about 10 minutes remaining before. Yeah. We have about 10 minutes. Yeah. If anyone has an online question, let us know. And then everyone can maybe take one question. You want to ask one? Yeah. Okay. Yes. And then we'll have closing remarks after.
Thank you.
10 minutes, we're not going to be so one person will answer each.
Okay, thank you, Kennedy, postmaster. I really was fascinated by the language of sacrifice. Yes, sir. And I'm just wondering how paternalizing that could sound, because to me it speaks to the issue of as well trying to glorify a mentality of disempowerment. because then if you start wondering about or probably getting so concerned about, I think I need to sacrifice myself for so and so to do this. Am I really, really engaging into this of empowering, or actually I'm perpetuating a given sort of mentality of disempowerment? I would have wished to ask as much, but I think because of let me stop.
Is there any questions online, Rebecca, that we want to get in? No? Okay. Yeah. And just a question from your moderator, just to add in to again, my internal gratitude for the three of you being here. And as I was doing research on this topic, I just kept thinking to myself, how do we get more people involved in your work? So I kept thinking to myself, and I've done a lot of work around York into empowering young people in the importance. So I thought to myself, if one of you can come up with a job ad or a posting, I'm a mature student. When I was young, I had to look up job ads. Right? You saw it, right? Yeah. Remember those days? Yes. And then you would be like, oh, now obviously we have the internet and everything like that, and we have and we have PDFs and things like that. But I have to look in the Toronto Sun and look up the job ads and all the qualifications to sell me, but even before I made the call. So how do you give me your best job ad of the work that you're doing, one of you, to sell, to engage more people in the impact of the work that you're doing? Because obviously, both with our community online and people who are going to be watching this later, we can start the recruitment. So.
Okay. Perfect. So
Let's start with the diamonds. Let's start with the diamonds. So I use the metaphor of a diamond, but one of my friends used a metaphor of a steel. He says steel or iron. Iron sharpens iron. So this is not like I said, it's not a monolith. It's what resonates with you. And if under pressure, I don't know what trees do, but in the fall, the leaves fall. In the spring, they sprout. So kind of adapting to the circumstances, but not being broken down by it, not withering away under the hard times, is my thought on going beyond the diamond. Like I said, we need, to your question, the question about sacrifice and self-sacrifice, like we need more folks involved. There's a connection between who's called to do this work and also what their expectations are. As mentioned by Eunice, I don't think that I myself, as a not-for-profit community organizer, I don't feel like I'm being exploited. So I don't use that language. I know there's space for harsh criticism. There's space for a reckoning and an acknowledgement of what is not working. I feel called to do this work, so therefore I have agency. I have control and power, and how I frame the work using a variety of mechanisms and methodologies is what's leading to some of the outcomes that are progressive. And I'm ready. Like I said, the pandemic hit me. It was by surprise. So I wasn't ready, but I'm ready. And one of the things in terms of having a team, we cannot do this work by ourselves. In terms of having a team is getting more folks involved. So if you visit our website, blackqueeryouthcollective.org, we have a tab titled Get Involved. And there you will see a range of, we're doing a call because we're really establishing a board and we're expanding our work. So I would also suggest you review our community needs assessment to understand the context of the work that we are doing. There are 5 priorities that were identified in our community needs assessment, including establishing more programs for Black, queer, and trans youth, trans people, queer women, more dedicated culturally specific programs around mental health, and of course, like I said, the investment of in education and training. So those are kind of our work priorities. And there are various vacancies that we will need to employ to respond to those areas of work. So those are the, I would visit our website to learn more about the organization, our work, how we work. download the community needs assessment. If you're interested, you can click the contact on the website's form and just submit a one-page bio. We do appreciate, like I said, you don't have to be an academic scholar or researcher. You don't have to have an impressive career. We are asking for, at minimum, you be a Canadian citizen, simply because it is not for profit and there are some regulations that we must comply with. We're asking that you have at least 2 years work, consultant, or volunteer experience, simply because we think that acknowledgement of the work that you are doing is important. Some people come to us expecting employment in a different way. We do offer contracts, short-term contracts for project coordinators, but right now we're not running any external projects with the community. So we are very transparent in terms of what is paid employment. We have a volunteer network, and even if you don't want to volunteer in terms of be actively involved in our work, if there's Black, queer, and trans youth in your circles who are uncomfortable talking about issues of in relation to employment or housing or gender affirmation, if they're questioning or curious, we also, like I said, we provide supports in those areas. So we do direct service as well. But if you are called to do this work, there are opportunities to be on our board, be on one of our advisory committees, or join our volunteer network. And please do not think we are exploiting you. Reciprocity is so important in community work. And despite the diversity of the Toronto population, there's a place for everyone at our table, especially if you are a part of the African Caribbean Black community and LGBTQ. Thank you.
I love that you said, it's to each their own. What analogy works best for you? I love what you said about the tree. That's so beautiful in so many ways. And it made me write down gold nugget, because I literally remember some time ago, I listened to a sermon and the priest said, or the reverend said, a gold nugget to become shiny, there must be friction on it and rubbing and shining. So every time it became a joke, but it really helped me when I felt like, man, I'm being rubbed up. I used to like just do that to myself. I'd be like, it's okay. You're just getting shined, and that's changed for me as I've gone through my career. But whatever works for you and speaks to you and who you are, that hold on to that analogy. Think of that tree all the time. Put it up on your wall, all of that good stuff. Sacrifice, I despise the word. I never thought doing this work would have meant what it means. I have been using the word discipline lately for myself to try to help myself understand the difference between sacrificing myself and being disciplined with something in order to get to, the means to the end. Sacrificing, leisure time or whatever it is. I say, no, that's me being disciplined. And then also being like, no, I'm not going to sacrifice time with my nephew. That's really important. I'm not sacrificing those things. That has nothing to do with discipline, in a way. So that's kind of how I've been dealing with it. And I don't like the word either, or the context of that in the work that we do. And the last part, the job ad. My work is, I love what you say about empowering the next generation. We want to make sure that the next leaders are here. They're amongst us. They are amongst us. I want to bring them into the fold and take care of you and guide you, share everything that we have or that we've been through. But we need that reach out. The Carnival recently started a next generation youth committee. It's on our Instagram. It's from 15 to 30 years old. It is a volunteer committee. However, at the place that we're all at, or the place that we're at in our organization, still looking for that community movement, still looking for volunteerism, not exploitation, and also trying to create a succession plan and ideas about when will I be able to leave or pass it on or have the next group of people come in to support, take it over. And that's really important to me. So definitely want everybody to reach out in any method you have. Go to the torontocarnival.ca website, and there's multiple ways you can connect with us, and please reach out. Thanks.
Saying this in front of everybody. Put me down as a volunteer. You can utilize me for whatever skill set you think I can be utilized for. But Carnival was where I first sold food out of my out of a former friend's truck on Yonge Street, because Yonge Street used to be the popping thing. Carnival was the first place that I got to play mass. In my first year of knowing my now wife, how she got the in with me was she came to Carnival to sell water with me while I was failing. So you guys gave me so much that I owe you, eh? Okay, so I'll give you my number at the end. I'm not even giving no email or nothing. I'm giving you my personal number so that this way, when this Carnival needs my support, I can be there. Okay. So I'm gonna answer all three questions, I believe, with one answer. So and I don't want to. Okay. I'll give his name, but I will tell you this because I've done a lot of studying. So Miyamoto Musashi, that's his name. He says, once you know the way broadly, you see it in all things. I believe he probably got that from Egypt. If you know anything about history, if you need to, go to France. Sometimes when those black men are coming around and telling you stuff and people call them Imhotep and all that stuff, they're actually very knowledgeable and they know what they're talking about. If you go to the Louvre, they'll actually end up reaffirming everything that those people are saying to you. And it becomes an eye-opening experience. So while I quoted somebody who's not from our diasporic community, I think that knowledge comes from our diasporic community. Once you know the way broadly, you see it in all things. We mentioned diamonds and saplings. We mentioned, I think it was, is sacrifice disempowering? And then we talked about a job description. Nature is the answer to all things. Nature is the answer to all things. It's what's a lot. We live in cities, so we see buildings too much. We see cars too much. Gardening taught me a lot. It taught me patience. Gardening on my little bit. Gardening taught me sometimes things are not in your hands. Gardening taught me not to blame people, but to blame environments. Because I never blame my plants for not growing. I always question the soil or the water or all these different things. So nature for me is the answer to everything. And why I say that is because the first question about diamonds and or commentary diamonds and saplings and stuff like that, nature has so much. A tree doesn't try to be a squirrel doesn't try to be a bear. Like there are so many different things in nature, and one of the coolest parts of nature is water. Some people, like Bruce Lee said, be water. Some people can be water because water is shapeless, formless. It can be a gas, it can be a solid, it can be all these different things. Some people have the ability, they can transform that much that they can be water. Some people are wood. They're rigid. They provide structure. They provide firmness. They provide tradition, something that you can rely on. Some people are leaves. Some people are squirrels. Nature is made up of all these different things to help sustain us on this planet, along with all the other things on this planet. So why can I not see that there are so many different parts of my Black community that need to be present? I need a diamond, I need a sapling, I need a tree, I need those who are willing to sacrifice. Countries with great power have great what? Military might. Those people who are going there with their military might are willing to put what on the line? Their lives. When I think about my self-care, honestly, I don't care about it as much. I'm conscious of it, and I try to make sure I do it, but I don't care about it. Because in my mind, I am, and I see a lot of, we're ethereal beings. You're here today, you're gone tomorrow, but you're not truly gone. So for me, do I care about my physical flesh as much? Because I have a child, I care a little bit more now. But I also know that I'm willing to make certain sacrifices that I don't expect others to make. And I'm willing to make those sacrifices because I don't want them to make those sacrifices. But I'm at a place where I can. We talked about sacrificing paychecks. We talked about sacrificing salary. Some people can sacrifice so many different things. Your family is sacrificing to see your dreams come true because it's their dream. And some of us are willing to sacrifice our lives for this thing. And it's not disempowering. It's just a part of nature.
This is where he's here, the circle of life. Yeah.
Big round of applause, please. Before I call up our director to close off Black History Month, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart to our panel, that was extraordinary. Not only did it enlighten my mind, it enriched my soul, and it's really made my heart smile, everything I've heard today.
Can I just say you're one of my mentors too, brother?
Thank you, yes. And part of that is showing my age, that I'm older than you.
We're more experienced.
Oh, thank you. Mischka, I want to thank you for reminding us all to be proud of ourselves and keeping our eye on the long-term vision. We're putting in the work. You know, what I hear from you is there's no sense, whatever I gain from this, if I'm not creating pathways behind me. And it's been a long journey. And even for Toronto Caribana, 58 years, but there's so much more work to do. And it's not just jumping and whining, right? There's so much critical work to do, including taking up space. So I thank you for being here today, Mischka, and it's a pleasure to meet you. Tatiana, who has gone from burnouts to showing out and doing grassroots advocacy that not a lot of people do. And I had chills when I read your bio, and I'm having chills this meeting and listening to you today. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We need more people like you. We need to follow in your footsteps, and we need to make sure that the people and the communities that you are representing feel inclusive and not exclusive, and that there's a place at the table for them. I was at a law firm this summer, and I actually have to give them credit. They said something that reminds me of what you were saying today. And they said diversity of all genders, all cultures is important to us because you cannot be at the best unless everybody's sitting at the table. And so thank you for representing everybody. My boy X, you can call me your mentor, but I have always been inspired by you. Your intellect and your energy is rare. It is great to have you here. It is great to engage in this conversation. And believe it or not, of all the powerful things that you said today, I'm going to remember to treat myself. Because the image of you in the spa, not at all. Not at all. But it does remind me of something. And, you know, when you're a university student, when you're doing advocacy work, yeah, we forget about ourselves a lot of times, treating ourselves. And, you know, sometimes it's good to put ourselves first so we can, as we say in Jamaica, wheel up and come back again. Right? So thank you. This is, on a personal level, this is my first time moderating for Tubman. Thank you. A year ago, I sat and watched, and then, you know, I wanted to be a part of this. So now to be here, standing here, is just, it's one of those pinch me moments in my life. And I've been so blessed by being part of this community, both here and obviously when I'm online. So thank you for everybody for listening to my comments today. I'm going to call up our Executive Director, Ruth, to come close us up for Black History Month. And I want to thank everyone for their time once again. And panel, we're taking a picture right when we're done, okay? So don't leave anywhere, okay?
Clifton is on it with the pictures, so thank you for that. I just want to thank so much everybody for coming today. You know, for us at the Institute, it was really important to ensure that we had community voices here because we are very aware that the learning that we do within community is not only in academic institutions here, and that, as you also rightly said, that a lot of getting us to this point is done within community as a collective, pushing for everyone. So we truly, truly, genuinely appreciate all of the work that you continue to do within the community, to support our community members to get to this level of education. And we also recognize it's a collective effort that we all do in various spaces that is necessary. So thank you all. Thank you to those who are online. And just to say that even though today officially ends Black History Month, Black history is every day. Black futures are every day. We know that. So continue to watch out for the other talks that we have through Tubman Talks. And of course, we always welcome you all here. So many things that I wanted to say while reflecting on what you all have spoken about today. And maybe we'll have some time offline because I know that we are over by half an hour, which also happens with our events. We don't end on time. We tend to end up liming after the talks. So thank you so much to everybody.